The Babylon Project was our last best hope for Sci Fi, a self-contained podcast 1 hour long located on the internet, a place of fun and discussion for Babylon 5 fans everywhere, a shining beacon in cyberspace, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the 20th anniversary of Babylon 5, the year the Great War to free Bab 5 came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon podcast. The year is 2016. The name of the place is the Babylon Project Podcast.
This is Maggie Egan, your ISN news anchor, and you're listening to the Babylon Project podcast.
Hi there, fans. This is Raul and Jim with the Babylon Project podcast.
Yay.
How are you doing tonight, my friend?
Doing good. A little bit tired, but I think I'll make it.
I know the tired thing. It's been absolutely insane. I've had wife injuries. I've had moms and doctors. I've had sinus infections and flu all in the last 6 weeks. But I'm well. I'm healthy again. Everything seems to be working. There are no more computer viruses on my system. So what episode are we talking about tonight?
Tonight we are going to talk about Season 2, Episode 2, Revelations.
Aha. This is one that I particularly liked. It kind of jumps right in to a lot of the, wrapping up things from Season 1, moving the story forward in a lot of ways, some very serious character development.
Yes. Well,
they don't waste time.
That's probably why it's called Revelations, because there's a lot of things being revealed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Speaking of revealing, how about an episode recap, my friend?
All right. Well, here we go.
Archive. Access. Initiated.
The episode opens with Londo calling for Delenn and G'Kar to be replaced as ambassadors. After Londo's motion is shot down, he visits with Natoth about the whereabouts of G'Kar, who has left the station to investigate a recent attack on Quadrant 37. Meanwhile, G'Kar is leading a 3-member fighter wing that is at a planet near the rim. His wing is being attacked, but he manages to escape through a jump gate and return to the station. Back on the station, Londo meets with Morden. Londo expresses his concerns that he might be implicated in the attack that G'Kar was looking into. Morden assures him that he has nothing to worry about. Morden further informs Londo that other demonstrations might be arranged and all he has to do is pick his target. Morden then asks Londo to keep him informed of anything he hears about activity that is taking place near the rim. Later, in a meeting of the Advisory Council, G'Kar explains what he has learned and informs them about the ancient enemy that was mentioned in his Book of Jaquan. G'Kar further informs the Council that he has convinced his government to dispatch a heavy cruiser to investigate a presumably dead planet known as Zahadum. He warns that if life is found on that planet, it could mean the death of all their races. Later, the heavy cruiser sent to Zahadum arrives and is immediately and completely destroyed by a mysterious alien ship. When Natoth delivers the news of the cruiser's fate to G'Kar and the rest of the Council, it is at first assumed that the ship was destroyed as a result of an accident. But G'Kar refuses this explanation and explains that the only way the ship could have been attacked right out of the jump gate is if the enemy were warned. G'Kar then looks at Londo. In another plot line, Dr. Franklin approaches Sheridan and informs him that Garibaldi's condition is not improving and that he believes that by using the energy transfer device used in the Season 1 episode, The Quality of Mercy, it may be his only hope for recovery. Sheridan reluctantly agrees. Later, Sheridan greets his sister Elizabeth as she enters the station for a visit. When Sheridan takes his sister to dinner, he tells her that he is excited about his new assignment, but she knows that he is covering his real feelings. Sheridan admits that he is still upset over the death of his wife, Anna. Elizabeth tells him that he needs to stop hiding his grief and deal with it so he can move on, but Sheridan is not ready to, and he convinces Elizabeth to drop the subject for the time being. Later, in his quarters, Sheridan again visits with Elizabeth, who again presses him into talking about Anna. Sheridan is full of regret that he didn't take leave and go on vacation with Anna, which opened the way for her to take a position as science officer on a deep space exploration ship. The ship was lost while on assignment, and Sheridan misses Anna more than he is able to express. Later, during a farewell dinner, Elizabeth hands Sheridan a data crystal that has a message from Anna explaining that even though Sheridan has canceled their vacation, she was actually relieved because she was going to cancel on him to take the job as science officer. Sheridan is finally more at peace over Anna's death. In another story, Garibaldi remains in a coma in MedLab, and Dr. Franklin approaches Sheridan about using the alien device from the Season 1 episode The Qualities of Mercy to heal Garibaldi. Sinclair agrees and later offers to help. Franklin's efforts are successful, and when Garibaldi finally awakens, Sheridan and Ivanova are called to MedLab. Garibaldi's aide, Jack, listens into the call from Franklin and also arrives in MedLab. Garibaldi is informed that President Santiago is dead and that Sinclair has been reassigned. Later, Garibaldi asks Lou to bring Talia Winters to see him. Garibaldi asks Talia to scan him to help him try to learn who shot him. She agrees, and while being scanned, Garibaldi sees the reflection of Jack behind him. Jack is immediately arrested and placed under maximum security. Not long after, Garibaldi leaves MedLab against the advice of Dr. Franklin and interrogates Jack. Jack doesn't reveal much, but he does tell Garibaldi that there is a new order coming and that he is going to be a part of it. Then Jack gives Garibaldi a salute. The newly installed President Clark contacts Sheridan personally and informs him that Jack is to be sent back to Earth immediately. Reluctantly, Sheridan obeys Clark's orders. Back in MedLab, Garibaldi talks with Ivanova and Dr. Franklin about the salute that Jack gave him, recalling that it was like one that Bester had given to Sinclair in the first season episode Mind War. Garibaldi speculates on how Psychor had endorsed Clark as vice president, and the abrupt departure of Clark just before Earth Force One exploded might point to a huge conspiracy. Later, a report comes in that Jack has disappeared while being transferred from the shuttle to another ship. Finally, we see the emergence of Delenn from her chrysalis. But when she does, her body is covered with a kind of crust. Dr. Franklin is called to her quarters and upon examination finds that the crusts just fall off when pressure is applied. Later on, during a meeting of the Advisory Council, Lanier enters and announces the return of Delenn, who now appears as a Minbari human hybrid.
Character files opened.
Thank you, Jim. Excellent as always.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I like the new opening graphics. Not the credit graphics, but the actual episode itself. They've definitely sharpened up a bit here.
Okay. Yeah, when I saw that in the notes, I thought, opening graphic. I said, I didn't really notice, and I thought you meant opening credits.
No, we saw the new credits last time, but we've got them improving. They're constantly improving their system to give better and better graphics.
Yeah.
On my HD TV, which is a 50-inch plasma, so it's real fast refresh, real beautiful resolution. You can definitely tell the improvement. So, who have we got on the show tonight?
Well, we have 3 guest stars. First one is Beverly Leach, who played Elizabeth Sheridan in this episode. She has credits on IMDb dating back to 1986. For sci-fi fans, some of her notable also guest starring series would have been Alien Nation, Quantum Leap, and she was on an episode of Star Trek Voyager.
Mm-hmm. And our other lady that actually doesn't show up until the very end, Beth Toussaint.
Yes.
My French is terrible. I speak Spanish more than French and not much Spanish.
I have a tough enough time with English.
You got it.
Yeah.
Beth Toussaint.
Yeah. And she was
Anna Sheridan.
She was Anna Sheridan. She has credits dating back to 1987. And very notably, one of her biggest ones is in Star Trek Next Generation as Ishara Yar, Tasha Yar's sister.
And that's actually where I remember her from.
Mm-hmm.
More than anything else. She had a thing with Data, didn't she?
Yeah. Well, she was stringing him along.
Right. Oh gosh. Okay. That might be an episode to just go back and rewatch. I particularly remember that.
Well, she was Tasha's sister and still living on the planet that Tasha came from, that had the two factions, very violent governments, and she was trying to get the confidence of the Enterprise crew to come in on her side of the equation and help them wipe out the other side.
Right.
She got found out and sent back to the planet, and Data was very disappointed because he thought he was going to sponsor her into Starfleet.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to let some of my biases kind of peek out here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to admit that, frankly, I rather liked Ashara more than Tasha. For some reason, I was never a big Tasha fan.
Not a whole lot were.
Yeah.
Returning and reprising his role as Jack, the mysterious Jack. He was previously, we didn't know his name. We did know he was Garibaldi's number 2.
Aide. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we talked about him on a previous episode.
Right. As Jack. Now, the one thing to remember, and we see it really come through here, is Jack took on the storyline that Laurel would have had otherwise.
Yes.
So he was obviously much more of a secondary character, but it still served its purpose.
Yeah.
Now, we do have one other new. Now, it's a new cast member. We've already mentioned Warren Keffer.
Yes.
It's a new cast member that's an old cast member, I guess is one way of putting it. The character is old, but the actress is new.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Mary Kay Adams taking over the role of Natoth.
Yeah.
If I hadn't seen Julie Caitlin Brown's version of Natoth, I would have been fine.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, with the original Natoth and the way it established that character, I really hate to say it, but it really just didn't cut it for me. I will say this, though. She'll be gone by the end of the season. So the rest of the show, Jakar, well, I was going to say he doesn't have an attaché or an aide, but in one respect, that's not going to be quite so true. He will certainly have someone who's there to assist him with whatever he needs.
Yes. A different dynamic, though, on that.
Yeah.
We're not going to go that far. However,
his arguments are much sharper.
Yes. However, this is not the end of Natoth.
Oh, certainly not.
So, and I believe the next time we see Natoth, it is Julie Caitlin Brown again, is it not?
No, it is not.
It is not. Okay.
It is not. We will see Julie Caitlin Brown on the show again, though. Unfortunately, she sinks even lower than a lizard.
I'll have to watch for that.
She'll be a lawyer.
Okay, I'll watch for that. I knew she came back, but
apologies to any lawyers that are out there listening to the show.
Yeah, no, I love lawyers. Lawyers are marvelous, especially if they're on your side.
Right.
Yes.
And someone else is paying for them.
Well, that never hurt either.
Initiating plot analysis.
Okay, so we have Londo, who is rather unhappy with the situation.
Yes.
Because they're having a meeting.
The council is in session.
And Delenn is not present.
Oh, I believe the word is indisposed.
Indisposed. And Jakar is also not present. And the two that are...
He's away on business.
Yeah, the two that are there to stand in for them don't have any authorization to do anything.
Or much of an idea of what's... Well, they have an idea of what's going on, but they really don't have an idea of what's going on. And Londo's rant about Delenn, oh, God, it is priceless.
Yeah, here, just play that for us.
Okay.
This is madness. How much longer will this council be held hostage to its missing members? Their behavior is inexcusable.
Ambassador Delenn remains indisposed.
Indisposed? She's in a cocoon!
Yes?
And do you have any idea when Ambassador Jakar will decide to grace us with his presence? For that matter, do you have any idea where he is? There, you see? One deserts his post without any explanation. The other one picks the most breathtakingly inconvenient moment possible to explore new career options, like becoming a butterfly. I move that we reprimand both governments and demand that they assign new representatives to this council. Is there a second?
Okay, like I said, that is just absolute priceless.
Yeah, and of course Londo does not get his way. We're not going to call for replacements.
No. But he does ask a very important question at the end there.
Yes.
Where is Jakar?
Mm-hmm. And then he corners our new Natoth.
Right.
And wants to know what's going on, you know. And now here, I'll tell you what, this new Natoth, I did not remember that Julie Caitlin Brown had not been back. And the voice immediately, I went, who is this? You know, and then she's called Natoth by name. And this Natoth sounds like a little girl.
Yeah, she's got a much lighter voice, no doubt about that.
Yeah. Now, we remember, of course, when Natoth went after Deathwalker and, you know, the growling and the yelling and all that stuff. And I just don't picture this new Natoth doing that.
She is not quite as, what's the word I'm looking for? Violent?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I said earlier, you know, this will be her only season. But yeah, the it's not just the voice, it's the whole demeanor that just didn't match up. Like I said, if we had started with her, I think it would have been a much better impression. It's just too much of a character shift.
Yeah. You think maybe she'd have grown into the role then, huh?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
But we do switch from there straight into that fight sequence with Jakar in the shadows.
Yes, I was just going to say, we find out where, or rather what the situation is that Jakar is in.
Yeah.
And then again, you've mentioned here huge improvements in the graphics and CGI. And I did notice that in this scene.
And it really stuck out in this sequence. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
There's going to be some really telling switches between some of the new sequences and when they go back and use some of the old stock footage.
Yeah.
Now, when you see some of these things like the loading dock stuff that they had at the very beginning, you know, it's really obvious on a high def on a large screen. But yeah, well, we do find out one thing at least: shadow vessels can be destroyed.
Yeah.
At least the small little fighters can.
Yes.
Not easily.
Right. And you know, a pretty heroic sequence here. Jakar making his escape.
Yep.
And his two wingmen make sure that he does make his escape.
The information he's got is pretty darn important.
Yes.
You know, one last thing to note. This is just off the side before I forget. Pay attention to what Londo's wearing. You notice he's still wearing purple.
Right.
He's still a little more on the buffoonish side. His character hasn't gone dark quite yet, but watch what he's wearing and how his demeanor changes as we progress through the season.
Okay.
You'll see that his attire matches his demeanor.
Ah. So we have Mr. Garibaldi is also not in the picture. He's been out since the first season, and he's still in a coma.
Uh-huh.
And while everybody's relaxing at Earhart's, which is a new addition to the show.
You know, it's named after Amelia Earhart, obviously.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
notice the music at Earhart's. It's period music from, early, or I guess 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we're in Earhart's during this show, you're going to have the period music. That's one of the things about Earhart's, and it's sort of the private officers club.
Yeah. Now, I wondered if there wasn't a little bit of a throwback here or a nod to The Right Stuff.
I don't know.
Well, if you recall, have you ever seen The Right Stuff?
No, I actually have not seen the movie.
Oh, Raul, no. Oh.
Seriously?
Oh, no, you got to see The Right Stuff. That's your assignment. Okay. In The Right Stuff, there's a place where all the pilots at Edwards Air Force Base gathered.
Uh-huh.
And it was called, in the movie, it was called Poncho's Happy Bottom Riding Club.
Okay.
All right. And it was a place for the pilots to go and drink and to meet up with female companionship and various other things. They, of course, had the music playing and the pictures of the test pilots that had died on the wall and all kinds of stuff. And the feeling in Earhart's was very much the same as it was from that bar on The Right Stuff.
Huh. That is something I will definitely have to check out then.
Oh yeah, it's in the first hour of the movie, so you can't miss it.
Okay.
So at any rate, Franklin approaches Sheridan and wants permission to use an alien device that we've seen previously.
Mm-hmm. That execution device.
Yes. That June Lockhart was using to cure people.
Right. And Franklin is wanting to use himself as the guinea pig on this.
Yeah.
Sheridan's a little nervous about it, obviously.
Yeah.
But he gives in. Yeah, he gives in. It's, in Franklin's opinion, it's the only way to do anything about, it's basically the only hope Garibaldi has at this point.
Yeah, he's tried everything else and nothing seems to be working.
Uh-huh. From here, we're following Sheridan along, and we meet his sister. This is the only time in the series she shows up.
Yes, he greets her coming off of a transport. She's there for a visit.
Yep. And, I have got to say, Beverly Leach, at this point, she really could be his sister.
I didn't key on that as much as you did.
That was something both I and Anthea had noticed.
Oh, okay.
But they've got dinner plans tonight.
Yeah.
This show with all the stories it has running at once, we're going to be hopping around a lot.
Yeah.
Now we hop along to catch up with Londo.
Right. He's a little bit worried.
Yeah. He's got some cold feet about what he did with Quadra 37.
Yeah.
And he's a bit nervous about it coming back to haunt him.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, he's got cold feet, but like a moth to the flame, he just can't avoid being drawn in.
Yeah. Well, he's in for a penny, in for a pound.
Uh-huh.
This is towards the beginning of the downfall of Londo Mollari.
Yeah. In fact, he makes a joking comment, just kind of quips, well, why don't we just eliminate the entire Narn homeworld?
Yes.
And Morden's response of one thing at a time, Ambassador, was dead serious.
Yes.
And Londo is clearly rattled by that response.
Mm-hmm. And up till now, Morden has been doing these little favors for Londo at no charge, but all of a sudden...
But now comes the price.
Yes.
Now comes the price.
And Londo has to pay off now with information. Anything he hears that may be taking place on the rim,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Morden wants to know about.
Even if it seems unimportant.
Right.
Well, we switch back to Sheridan and dinner.
Yes.
And Jim, different table.
A different table and a different camera angle. We're not pointed at the entrance this time. It looks like we're pointed actually away from the entrance. Yeah. A different table. And Sheridan and his sister are discussing Anna Sheridan,
his wife,
who is presumed deceased when she went away as a science officer
off on the rim. Apparently there was a race that they found on the rim that hasn't been around for at least 1,000 years.
Yes, and she was lost, and she points out that she has been gone for 2 years now, and that she feels that Mr. Sheridan has not dealt with this loss in the proper way.
Yep. And we also find out that Anna was his sister's best friend.
Yeah, they were best friends.
So presumably that's how they met.
Yeah. And Sheridan gets really upset.
Yep.
He will handle this in his own way.
Yeah, and we're going to get to the reasons why a little later. He'll eventually tell her.
Yeah, he hasn't handled it.
No.
But, his own way, I guess, is just to ignore it,
She's willing to put off the conversation for a while, but she makes it dead clear that it is not going away.
Right.
And we make the next plot line jump. Soon now. Soon. I'm sorry, that line from Lanier just, as always... That's just sort of a teaser for what's going to be coming on a little later.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we're back to MedLab.
Yes. And Franklin has the machine out. He's removing his jacket, getting ready to hook himself up and give his energy to Mr. Garibaldi.
And it looks like Sheridan's about as reckless as Sinclair.
Yeah, well, at this point, definitely. He's going to step in instead. And
right.
Franklin's like, no, you can't do this. I have to do this. And Sheridan very correctly points out, what if you go too far and pass out? It's just going to drain you until you're dead, right?
Yep.
So, Franklin sees the logic, and I like the way Sheridan pointed out, it won't look good on my resume if I lose my doctor.
Yes.
And, yeah.
They do get it to work with Garibaldi, so
that comes back a little later, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we cut to Jakar's quarters.
Yep.
And he's back.
He's back.
Yes.
With lots of drama.
Yeah, he's in a very dark mood. Sitting in a dark quarters, and he's scared.
Yep. About a new race or an old race.
Yes.
He had searched the rim. Guess which? New or old. But apparently evil is moving and it is trying to be unnoticed.
Right.
That's going to be an important point somewhere further down the road.
Yes. And I'm pretty sure Jakar knows who it is already.
Oh, yeah. When he pulls out the Book of Jaquan and shows the picture, there's no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So now we hop back again, and actually I guess at this point is when we could say we've got all those threads thrown out and now we're going to start pulling them in together for the end of the episode.
Yes.
So Delenn is having her alien moment and she's hatching.
Yes. and then Mike wakes up. Mr. Garibaldi is back.
Yep. With Jack listening in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike's awake, and he's worried about getting the warning out.
Mm-hmm.
A little late.
And, yeah. And, in walks, and they call Sheridan in, and Sheridan walks in, and Mike looks at him and says, I don't know you.
Yeah, and he clearly does not trust Sheridan.
Well, he he's not trusting anybody at this moment because if you recall, he says, geez, I'm out of it for a couple of weeks and the whole place goes to hell.
Uh-huh. The truth is, I really can't blame Mike. When you consider what happened to the president, the assassination bit, and getting shot in the back the way he did, yeah, I can see a little, I can see a little antagonism on his part there.
Well, he's not going to trust anybody anymore.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't know who shot him.
Right.
So, but at any rate, as he's waking up and talking to everybody, Jack is standing there in the background.
With his hand on his firearm.
Well, he's actually pulling it out of the holster.
What's he going to do? Shoot? That's the only piece of this episode that annoyed me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what's he going to do? Start a shootout in the middle of MedLab?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose if he picked off a few key people, but he would never get off the station.
He would never get off the station, and the whole conspiracy that he's involved in would have blown up.
Yeah, it may be a plot hole, but it's also a plot device to get us to another place,
Agreed.
Because I feel really silly not knowing this, but do we know that Jack shot Garibaldi well, of course we do.
We do.
Yeah.
No one else does.
Okay. So, he's getting ready to cover himself.
Uh-huh. And as we move out of MedLab, Londo and Jakar hook up. Londo wants to know where Jakar has been,
mm-hmm.
and Jakar tells him he's going to need his help about a threat coming that is going to impact all the races.
Yeah.
Except maybe the Vorlons, but who could threaten the Vorlons?
Exactly. And this is what Mr. Morden is looking for.
It will be.
Yes.
It will be once Jakar updates that council. But first, we get a surprise for Lanier.
Yeah. And Delenn is out of her chrysalis.
And Crunchy.
Yeah, they call for Franklin. Franklin, I don't make house calls, and Lanier lets him know that this is very urgent.
I got to say that is a cool makeup job.
That must have been really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, it looks a lot like what we'll see on Mr. Morden in season 4, I think.
Ah, yeah, that's true. But you know who she reminds me of?
Who?
From the Fantastic Four, that she reminds me of the Thing.
The Thing?
Yeah.
Wrong color and not quite bulky enough, but other than that, it does look very similar.
Yeah. But, but this flakes off. And even after going through all this and all the prophecies and everything else, Delenn doesn't even know what she's become yet.
Nope, not yet. But in the meantime, we are back to Liz and John catching up.
Yes.
Yeah, and here's where we find out what's up with him where Anna's concerned.
Yeah, this time they're in his quarters.
He blames himself.
Yes. And the reason he blames himself is because they were supposed to get together.
Uh-huh.
And he canceled.
Right. He canceled their meetup, and she took a ship out to the rim for that exploration mission.
Right. And so he's blaming himself for her death, that if he had kept that appointment,
she would have still been alive.
Everything would have been okay.
Well, we find that out in the last minutes of the episode.
How wrong he was.
In the meantime, we're going back to Crunchy. Delenn.
Yes. But yeah, well, anyway, he's just beating himself up big time over this.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So Elizabeth is very right to call him on it and straighten up the record.
And it looks like there's something under the crunchy parts. Some pink.
Yeah, and she appears to be in pain. And yeah, when that piece flakes off, you can see normal flesh underneath. Yes.
As you said, she is trying to figure out, she doesn't even know what she is now.
Right.
And clearly in pain.
And we go back to the council again.
Uh-huh.
Jakar is updating the council on what he's found.
And Kosh is even more silent than usual. Joke.
Yeah, Kosh doesn't say anything. Yeah. He doesn't say much anyway. Yes.
Yep.
And Jakar has requested that a ship be sent to Zahadum, which is the first time I think we hear that name. to find out what's going on out there.
A place that hasn't been heard of or seen in 1,000 years.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I wonder where the connection is here, because
1,000 years, that's come up. This is the third time 1,000 years in the past has come up.
Yeah, it came up with Babylon 4.
It came up with Anna Sheridan.
Yes.
And it's up now.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's.
I wonder if that's a coincidence.
Maybe a planned coincidence, yes.
But Londo finally gets to pay for his favors.
Yes. And, did you notice that Morden was like, oh, crap, this is not a good thing.
He covers it quickly, but yes.
He's really concerned about this.
Uh-huh. We jump over now and get back into Mike's mind.
Right.
Literally in this case, because Lou's bringing Talia in for him.
Right. And we got to find out now who shot Garibaldi and see if there's anything he can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And for Garibaldi to submit to a telepathic probe, that is epic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very out of character, but in this case, it shows how desperate he is to learn what happened.
But speaking of Revelations, yeah, Jack gets set up and taken down.
Yes.
Somehow I think Jack ultimately might have been a little bit better off if they just let Lou be enthusiastic.
Yeah. Well, Troy Rudder told me about a little organization they had. I'm sure would agree with you. He said during the show they had something called the Cult of Lou.
The what?
The Cult of Lou.
I've never heard of this.
I don't know very much about it, but one evening while I was chatting with Troy, he mentioned this.
Hey Troy, you got to send us some details.
So, well, I'll get on the horn with him and have him maybe record him saying something.
Right.
But yeah, the Cult of Lou, they were all the people who were big Lou fans.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, yeah.
I will say this.
Go ahead.
The interrogation, what did you think of that photography? Was it not weird?
Well, before you go back to that, I wanted to point out that you have the shades of Dirty Harry. with Lou's enthusiasm. Make my fragging light year.
Yeah. I think in the long run, Jack would have been better off that way.
Yeah. Well, he told Sheridan, why don't you go take a walk around the block a couple of times and we'll take care of it. Okay, anyway.
Yeah. The lighting, that photography angles in that interrogation.
Oh, this was noir all the way.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, all they needed to do was make it completely black and white, and it would have been something Humphrey Bogart could have done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We do get some real info here. There's clearly something much bigger going on than just the mess with Home Guard.
Yeah.
And it seems Psychor is involved.
Yeah, well, which we already knew from the newspaper that Garibaldi was reading back in season 1.
Uh-huh.
Psychor is endorsing candidates and publicly coming out with things like that.
That be seen you salute.
Oh, yeah, well, if that wasn't telling, nothing else would be.
If that was not a direct message, I don't know what was.
Yeah.
And you know what? Based on the call that Sheridan got, I'd say President Clark is up to his frontal lobes in it as well. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, it's quite obvious. I mean, immediately send this guy back to Earth. And it's like, Sheridan's like, well, that's not the way we handle things. After all, he has shot Babylon 5's security chief. They should be handling it on Babylon 5.
Yeah.
And why would EarthGov, especially all the way as high as the president, want to get involved with a security officer, something between security officers?
Yep. Shadow battle crabs. Can I say badass on our show?
Sure, say it.
Shadow battle crabs, they're just badass.
Yes. They are scary.
Yep.
Their skin moves
Yep. And they take out that Narn heavy cruiser.
like nothing. It's like a hot knife through butter.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And for some reason, Kosh just seems so happy about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, sarcasm. I'm in
Yeah.
as sarcastic a mood tonight as I was when I made my notes. So.
Yeah. We got to get T-shirts made. The many moods of Kosh, where you have that same picture. Happy,
Yes,
sad,
yes.
angry, frustrated. Yes.
Oh, gosh. Jakar, though, realizes that there was a mole.
Hey,
Huh?
Raul, you know what's going to happen, don't you? Somebody's going to have shirts made like that and become freaking multimillionaires, and it was our idea.
And it's our idea.
Yeah.
That's how it usually works.
Yeah. Oh, well. So you say Jakar realizes there's a mole.
Yep.
And the first person he looks at is Londo.
Does he suspect Londo at this point, though? Truly.
Oh, you bet he does. Who else? He didn't tell anybody else.
I'm just thinking, because it's not just Londo that he looks at. He looks at Londo and Sheridan.
I think he suspects Londo more. I mean, Sheridan would have nothing to gain from this.
Oh, Sheridan's a total unknown for him. And I'm just saying that just to throw it out, because as things progress, we see almost, at some points, some friendly overtones between Londo and Jakar, to the point where Jakar is buying him drinks before the full-blown war breaks out, and Jakar goes mad.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll tell you what. Let me put it to you this way. I'm going to put myself into Jakar's place. And I have Sheridan sitting in front of me, and I have Londo sitting in front of me.
Who he hasn't seen before this day.
Right. And Sheridan is a former Starship commander. He is a war hero. He's an officer.
Or war criminal, depending on who you ask.
Well, yeah, it depends on, of course. But a figure who has proven his honor. And then you have Londo. Okay.
But Londo is more of just a useless buffoon than anything.
Well, yeah, but see, I think there's been too many things happening lately that surround Londo. But of course, Jakar can't prove it, so he just kind of shakes it off here at this point.
Well, we're not entirely done with the council chambers.
No,
we've had this huge buildup on what has Delenn become.
Yes.
Well, she has hair.
She has hair.
Sinclair's on Mimbar. She's to be a bridge. She's a bridge here.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what she says.
Yes.
I don't know how much the Great Council knows or would approve of that little speech, but there it is.
Well, we know that certain members would not.
Uh-huh.
And I think others would, depending on the cast.
Right.
Naroon would probably have a stroke.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at any rate, you have in your notes, Sheridan looks smitten.
Oh, yeah.
Who the heck wasn't?
Well, I think Londo was more in just a state of shock.
I remember the first time I saw this, it was like, oh my goodness, she's beautiful.
Uh-huh. Well, even in her full Mambari makeup, it's like the lines of her face is like, this is a gorgeous lady.
Yeah.
And when you finally see with hair, you really, for at least us Americans, that's really the first time we see just how beautiful a woman Mira Furlan is.
Yeah, and, it wasn't always that way. Remember The Gathering? She looked like a guy.
Yep. Sheridan is describing this change to his sister.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some question about just how deep the change was. And she decides to give him a message from Anna.
Yeah. Yeah, it's time to lose the guilt. And apparently Elizabeth has determined that this is the right time to make him face the truth.
Yeah.
The message from Anna is to Elizabeth, but it's a vid call.
Correct.
And she explains that she was actually relieved that he canceled because she was going to have to cancel anyway.
The trip was too good to pass up.
Yeah, and she had to take that position or she'd lose it.
Uh-huh.
So she didn't leave in a huff and angry at him. She She, okay, that's cool. you know,
Right. So Sheridan can finally say goodbye.
yes,
For him, that was the thing that was really hurting. He didn't get to say goodbye and he loves you.
yes,
So that finally puts that in the past.
yes. And Sheridan can now move on.
Uh-huh.
And you have a something that could be coincidence again.
We already talked. Yeah, we've already talked about that. So
Yeah.
well, now we wrap up all the loose ends.
Yes.
Mike is putting together the pieces of the conspiracy, talking to Franklin and Susan.
Yes.
This is where he points out the prisoner salute.
Yep. And Sheridan says goodbye to Elizabeth.
Yep. And like I said, she really could be his sister.
Yeah. And we never see her again.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
And he gets a call to come up to CNC from Susan.
Right.
But before we get that, Jakar and Natoth are talking.
Yes.
And he's reading human poetry, Yeats in particular.
Yeah.
Things fall apart the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born? Prophetic to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And as he says, things have changed, and they will never be the same.
Yes. And so it begins.
Not quite. Sheridan arrives up in CNC to find out what's up, and it turns out that Jack was transferred to an unmarked ship.
Yes. And has disappeared.
With all the evidence.
Yeah.
It's very cold in space, Jack. Very cold.
Yes. And I remember earlier, Garibaldi asked him if it was the Home Guard that he was involved with. And Jack said that Home Guard was a bunch of Red Cross volunteers, basically, compared
More
to
or
what's
less.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah, so somehow I don't think Jack ever made it back to Earth.
Yeah, you could be right. And you never know. Maybe he did make it back to Earth and he's just ensconced in whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I kind of tend to lean your way.
Yep. And folks, that poem of Jakar, that was just a small piece of the poem. Hang on after we wrap here, and it really fits the whole of Babylon 5, so we might be able to get a full reading of it for y'all.
All right.
But that is Revelations.
Yes.
And Revelations indeed.
Where do we go from here?
Green and purple? The geometry of shadows.
Yeah.
There are definitely some lighter aspects in the next show.
Yeah.
And after the intensity of Revelations, I mean, I had made some snarky comments throughout, but that's my natural personality. This is an intense episode. So we get some lighter moments coming up.
Yeah, some moments.
If you have not watched Geometry of Shadows yet and you're a Michael Moorcock fan, you're going to be thrilled.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts on your side, Jim?
Well, not on the episode. I should report, though, that I have recently read all of the books that you recommended.
Uh-huh.
I have written about them on my blog, Jim's Sci-Fi blog, at blogspot.com, jimscifiblog.blogspot.com.
Which I recommend to anyone.
Oh, well, thank you.
And everyone.
And I just thought the books were outstanding.
All of the books are good. Some are better than the others. The other two trilogies are good, but the four that you've read, the Centauri Prime books and the Marcus Sinclair book,
yeah,
I think those are the best.
Yeah. I just thought they were super. And I'll tell you what, Peter David, they couldn't have gotten anybody better than Peter David to do that trilogy.
I would have loved to see that wrap-up of Centauri Prime done as a miniseries.
Oh, wouldn't that be neat?
Oh gosh, if they ever did, if you know, rumors talking about a possible reboot, that would be what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
The only problem would be Jakar.
Yeah, well, and that and aging actors.
Well, since the end of the story is 20 years down the road, the actors would be just about the right age now.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose.
But the reason I guess the reason I would say probably it couldn't happen is without Catullus, you don't have Jakar.
No. Yeah, that wouldn't work, would it?
You will find some people who will say season 2 is the best season of the series.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would agree, and it's because I couldn't pick between seasons 2, 3, and 4. But everything from here on, folks, the way season 1 was a little more of here and there where the story was concerned, from what we start here with season 2 through the end of season 4
Mm-hmm.
is, well, I guess the best way to do it is take the last 4 or 5 episodes of season 1 and stretch that through 66 episodes.
Yeah. No, it's great. Well, I think that about wraps us up.
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
And like I said, folks, do try and stick around for the full reading of the Yeats poem.
Yep, and also the fair lady will tell us all about how to leave us feedback.
How to find us.
And keep sending that stuff in so we can put together another feedback episode. That last one was a lot of fun.
And the other thing, folks, if you can give us 4 and 5-star reviews on iTunes, that's going to help raise awareness of the show. It'll help it show up on searches. It'll raise our profile, so we would definitely appreciate them. Yep. And until next time, are we ready to say it, sir?
Yeah. Was there any boom today?
No boom today.
Boom tomorrow?
Boom tomorrow.
There's always a boom tomorrow.
There's always a boom tomorrow. Good night, everyone.
Good night now.
Podcast terminated. Thank you for listening to the Babylon Project podcast. You can email Raul and Jim at the Babylon Project podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Babylon Project Podcast. On the internet, we are at babylonprojectpodcast.wordpress.com. To subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed on the webpage.
William Yeats, The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, the blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight, a waste of desert sand. A shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs, while all about it wind shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born